Going on? You're a famous pop star. Um,
A
th-
famous pop
this
star.
is the interview with Miley Cyrus, right?
Oh, I'm sorry. No, this is Selena Gomez.
Oh, oh,
Right.
Selena, I'm
Big, no
so sorry.
worries.
I'm so
No, yeah,
sorry.
I
This
totally
happens
understand.
all the time, I'm sure.
Just a mix up.
It's a
Yeah, just the
mix
I'm not Debbie Ryan though,
up.
so that's really offensive.
It's
Yeah.
really
So.
offensive. Oh my gosh. Welcome to Heavily Invested, episode 4. Today's
Woo-woo.
guest is David. David, me and you met at college, and I
Yes.
think our first meeting was officially my first year at school. You were visiting the campus, and
Oh yeah.
if I remember correctly, I was so disinterested in a social life at the time that I barely
hmm
acknowledged anyone's existence. And I remember you telling me this at some point that
Yeah.
like I didn't acknowledge your existence, and I looked back and I was like, yeah, that was a weird time in my life.
Because I like this is okay, this is a funny experience. Sorry, you just saying that because I was thinking about like where we had first met and I couldn't even pinpoint it.
Yeah.
But now you mentioning that literally took my mind to such a vivid point of like, oh, that's right. Because to your audience, we shared a very unique college experience where we went
Yeah.
to a private Christian college.
Yeah.
And I remember visiting, and I was just like super uppity. Like, I'm excited to be at like another Christian summer camp, except it's college. And like, I remember walking into your room, and you had like no, I didn't walk into your room. I walked into your painting room because this was
Mm.
when that hallway was like not,
Yeah, not
it wasn't a
used.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, like, I remember walking and be like, a painting room. And then you were, and then you were like in there painting, and I was like, oh my gosh, wow, amazing. And then I think you just looked at me, and then you just turned away
Oh no. I'm the
right
worst.
out. And I was like, what the heck? I was like, what the heck is up with that guy?
No. Dude, there were
Oh.
times. So yeah, for the listeners, I had never painted before that year. That was the first time I'd ever painted, and my first painting was terrible. But the guys on my hall were super encouraging, and they're like, like you can't be a winner right away. Like, they gave me all these analogies or whatever, and
Right.
I was like, cool, thanks guys. And ended up, painting more, and I just kind of fell in love with it. But that year, because I had my own room, I had like all my painting stuff in there. Like I could do
Wait, you did not
whatever.
have your own room. I just
Right.
want to point that out. You had a
Yes.
roommate that was just like not absent
Yes.
or like
Yes.
not present. Yeah.
Yes.
That was really funny that you started with that.
His
I did not
clothes
have
were
a
on the
roommate.
floor more than he was ever in the room.
Yeah.
Yes, I think I spent more time in Tarek's room that year than I did in my own room, including sleeping.
Mm-hmm. Sounds
And
right.
yeah, and so yeah, I somehow randomly, like, it was such a crazy circumstance that let me have this weird room to myself where I could paint in, and I would get so into painting. There were times where I skipped classes because I was painting.
What? I
Yeah.
didn't know that.
Yeah. So like I'd be painting, I'd be like, oh, I got an hour, to my next class, I'll be fine. And I'd get into it, and then I look down at my
You
phone and
black
like
out?
3 hours had gone by. And I'd be like,
Oh my
oh my
God.
gosh, I just skipped 2 classes. Like, oh,
That's so funny.
yeah, yeah.
What did you tell your professors?
Dude, I was just like, hey guys, like, I'm sorry, I totally spaced. And I took the point reduction because, like, our school was ruthless when it came to missing classes.
Oh,
Uh,
right.
uh, yeah. And so it didn't happen too often, but I remember a couple times where I just totally whiffed on classes.
That's
Um,
insane.
yeah,
That's so fun. I didn't know that. Wow.
yeah,
You
super
just blacked
strange.
out.
Yes, yes, I did. But all of that to say, that is how me and David met. David, you are a musical wizard, a
Okay.
man of great skill. I actually don't know how many instruments you play. I just know you play them well. Um,
Yeah, I do play instruments. I'll just leave it at that.
okay, okay, and you count your
Yeah.
voice as an instrument as well.
Yeah, I'll say that. Yeah.
Okay, okay,
I have it these days, but only because I've been like ruthless to it, you know?
yeah, yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, right.
I think the first time I don't even know if we had a conversation about it, but I think the first time I realized you played games was I saw your DS in like your little like bedside cubby thing. And I was like,
Oh
"Oh,
yeah.
like cool, David plays games, like something we can talk about." So if you don't remember, that's totally fine. But what video game would you say you really first invested time into?
So, okay, the first game I ever invested time in. Okay, so I have like two
Okay.
options. Oh, actually, I only have the one option because there's no way that this would have been an option then. But the first one I think of is when Nintendo had released the Super Mario and Luigi games where they played together.
Oh,
Do you remember
yeah.
those? Like there was one for the Game Boy Color. I don't know the name of that. I'm gonna Google that. It's just like these games where like
Say that again.
it was like one of these games where they were like one entity instead of just like you either play it as Mario. Oh, it's Mario and Luigi's Adventures, Mario and Luigi Superstar
Yes.
Saga.
Okay. Okay. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. And so it's like the same premise as like every other Mario game ever to exist. Is like, oh my gosh, Peach is in trouble, like big shot, and like it's up to us to save them. However, this game starts differently because usually Mario is the one to know that Peach is in trouble,
Yeah.
right? But in this one, Luigi is the one to find out. Like he's the one. He's like. So I
Oh.
think it starts off with them, and they're like, or it starts off with Luigi, and like Luigi's just like outside, like literally doing his laundry, like hanging up on the cable, and then he like, well, this whole scene happens at the castle, and that's a separate thing. But he sees like Bowser's ship like fly away, and then he's like, whatever, like not paying attention to it because I guess he's Luigi. And so then like Toad comes in, and he's like, like
Yeah.
Toad, and so like he comes in, and he's like, oh my gosh, the world is ending. Peach has been kidnapped. We need to do something about this. And Luigi's like, oh my god, I can't believe this. And so then he runs in the house because they're living the
Right.
roommates, the
Yeah.
brothers, of course. And so he runs in the house and he like this was my favorite part because like I think this was one of like probably 5 times in the whole game that you're like actually single player in the role playing
Yeah.
game. You're just like you just like walk in as Luigi. So you like walking, explore their house, you look at their little wares, which is really cute. And they live in like a mushroom home. It's like a whatever, probably a 2 bedroom, like 1.5 bath, something like that.
Yeah. Like a
And
1,500 a week.
right, yeah, 1,500 a week, like 1,800 square
Right.
footage,
Right.
whatever.
Right.
Mushroom, great neighborhood.
Lots of extra pipes lying around.
But none of them are, necessarily for water. Most of them for travel. But so funny. And so, but like you run up the stairs to like get Mario, who's in the shower. It's like midday, or maybe in the day. I don't know. It's so weird.
Where is he coming from?
Cool. my assumption is that like this was the morning and that like everyone was just getting ready.
Okay.
But then Luigi was out there doing so I don't know. That was my assumption. But there's no really storyline to it. So it's just like you like go in there and then like you bother Mario. I think you like jump on him to make him get out of the shower, and he comes out in his underwear.
Whoa!
This was the crazy part. I remember that. Oh my god. he like comes out and he's like Mario, and you're like, ugh. So the beginning of the game is just utter
Oh
pandemonium
my
and like chaos.
gosh.
Like it's just absolute
That's
ruin.
so
And like
funny.
already as like a 9, 8, or 7 year old, I don't know, like I'm just stressed
Right.
out as it
Right.
is because I'm like, what is happening? I can't believe it. And so then you link up and then you do like a tutorial
Yeah.
process where you like learn how to play and you like go to the castle. And then that's where the adventure begins because you like travel to all these different places to try to find Peach, kind of like every Mario game on the planet. You just like try to catch Bowser
Right.
ahead of his step, but you end up never doing that for at least like 6 or 7 times so you catch up. And so like that's just the first game that I am invested to like by myself.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say that a lot throughout the podcast because like it's important to mention that I did this game by myself because like I grew up with a brother, and I don't know if you relate to this. Is Glenn older
He
than
is,
you?
yeah.
Okay, so like I don't know how far apart.
3 years.
Okay, so like you played games with each other, like
Yeah.
you play video games.
He's more of a
Yeah.
gamer now than he was when we were kids. Um
Oh, okay.
yeah, he was always like he was a really popular always with friends kind of guy. I was the like loner building Legos in my room kind of guy.
Oh, I see. I see. Okay, cool, cool, cool. Good to know because that changes like the perspective a little
Yeah.
bit. This is really cool because like we've grown up with like video games like all throughout our lives. So we're like the second
Yeah.
generation of like our family to be playing video games, which is really cool because like my dad and like his crew and then my mom's brothers would play video
Okay.
games and stuff like that back in the past when they had like went to the
Yeah,
arcade
right. When
and
they were
like
cool.
right when they were cool and like probably a little bit more richer than we are because I never and so crazy but like
Yeah,
whatever.
right.
But like my cousin like was the gamer of the family, and so like every video game recommendation we would get it from him. And so
Uh
like he was the one that was really invested in like the Nintendo
okay.
series. He was huge into Final Fantasy and like Kingdom
Yeah.
Hearts, the Square Enix games. And so like we just kind of like fed off of his
Okay.
knowledge. And so we like every time we'd go over to his house, he would have all these video games. And of course, like we didn't have the video games and we'd go to his
Mm,
house. We would all of a sudden be like, we want the video
yeah.
games. Like we'd go home and we'd like make a business proposal for our parents and be like, here's how happy we would be if you bought this for us.
I love it because literally David, we did the same thing. Like, yeah,
Really?
yeah.
Okay.
I'm thinking. I'm trying. Like, you made me think about like what me and Glenn played when we were kids, and it's funny
Mm-hmm.
because I'll talk more about this in a second. But the game I think of is Paper Mario for the N64.
Oh yes. Uh-huh.
And I remember like even so it wasn't for Paper Mario that we had to do this. It was for Super Smash Bros. Because my parents didn't like fighting, being the good Christian parents that they are.
Right.
And we had to like legitimately sit them down and be like, "This is why fighting in Super Smash Bros. Is okay." As you can see here, the
Mm.
beginning video, they are toys, so it's just like in Toy Story when the toys fight each other. It's not a big deal.
Oh wow. Dan, you have to know I'm lactose intolerant. You can't milk it that like that much. Jeez. Oh my
Dude, it was
gosh.
so
Kind of like in Toy
yeah,
Story.
dude. It's like we had like illusions and like we had to, yeah, it wasn't really that bad, but like I do remember having to like present arguments to my parents as to why we should be allowed to play games. So that's so funny. That's so
Mm,
funny. I
wow.
love that.
Uh, good on you. I was never able to reach the Christian heart of my parents because I wanted to play Pokemon at a very early
Yeah.
age, but I was never allowed to because Pocket
See,
Monster,
yeah,
Demons,
it's so
whatever.
funny because our neighbors were the same way. So their parents were super strict with them and wouldn't let them play Pokemon. My mom didn't want us reading Harry Potter because of witchcraft, but she had
Mm,
no problem with
okay.
Pokemon. So it's always funny to me the
Oh,
differences that I see in families with like what they think is okay versus what they don't think is okay. Um,
that's
and like
crazy.
it's just funny to me because I feel like all of the parents that had those view on Pokemon. Now, I'm generalizing, and this could not be the truth, but I feel like they didn't
Right,
actually
of
sit
course.
down and like watch an episode of the TV show Because like if you watch any episode of the show, it's like, oh, this is very clearly like for kids, made for kids, like.
But Dan, you do not want to give the devil a foothold. Why would
Dude,
you ever watch an episode and
you're
invite
so
that?
right. What was I thinking? The amount of people that I'm gonna reach with this video, they're gonna say, "Wow, what a
Oh,
heathen!
praise the
What
Lord.
what a
Wow.
sinner! Saved
Yeah.
by grace." Am I right?
Oh, literally my hands are lifted. You can't see it. But... Or let me see if I can do that on
Oh,
Animal
there you
Crossing.
go. Throughout the.
I'll just do this.
I don't know if that is the same. Oh, I
Oh
love it.
man.
What I was gonna say was about Mario, Super Mario, was it Saga or Superstar Saga?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Right.
I love those games because the fighting style was that like turn based. And
Yes.
it's very
Uh-huh.
similar to Paper Mario, and I loved in almost at least the ones that I played, they had the aspects where like if you pressed B at the right time, you could like block damage.
Oh, I'm sorry. You like cut
Oh,
out.
okay, perfect. If you press B at the right time, you could like block damage. Um,
Yes, I do remember
and
that.
I always thought as a kid, I was like, if I'm good enough, I can never take damage in this game. I,
Oh?
I was like, I was so adamant that like, because there's some of them where like, if you do it just right, you take no damage at all. And so I
Right.
was like, is it possible that if my reactions are so good, like, I don't know, just that skill aspect of the game, I thought was enjoyable because it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't just like
Wow.
random chance or like did I prepare right for battle. It's like there's also just a little sliver of like this could be the boss battle. I could have 1 HP, but I still could survive if I hit that B button just right. Um, yeah,
Right.
I
How old were you when you were playing
I don't
this?
know, like 10 or 12.
Jeez, my brain could like never fathom that option. I just would like die so many times, just like absolutely fail and then just retry.
That's so
Or like
funny.
I I remember like I don't know how saving used to work in that game. I think it was like checkpoint
Yeah,
saving. Is that
I think
right?
you had to like reach like a block and like jump and hit it, and it would like on the
Yeah,
world
yeah,
map or
yeah,
something.
yeah. And then it overwrite your save. Like, so I would like I think outside of boss battles are really hard. I would just like I remember getting so frustrated that I'd be like, I'm only 9, and then I'd like close it and turn it off, and then just try again tomorrow. Like I was just so angry.
He said I'm only 9.
Or however
Right,
old I was
right.
playing that
That's
game.
so funny. No, I remember very vividly for Kingdom Hearts 2, my older brother,
Okay.
he told me, he's like, dude, the final boss is so hard. And I got to the
Mm-hmm.
final boss and I just whooped him. And I was like, Glenn, the final boss was not hard. Like, what are you talking
I
about?
can
And
imagine.
he told me, he's
Right.
like, I got one, like, what level were you at the final boss? And I was like, I don't know, like 54 or something. And he's like, Dan, I was 29. And I was like, oh.
Oh, what?
Because what Glenn would do is he would just try to get through the game. So like he would just
Oh,
like,
right. He just skip every
yeah, he would just
battle or
like
whatever.
trailblaze through the
Yeah.
game. Whereas I'm like, okay,
Mm,
I'm gonna stand outside this boss battle and I'm gonna grind enemies for 4 hours until I'm like level 60.
right.
Um,
And you're gonna like alchemize
yeah, right.
everything.
I'm gonna
Like
have
you're
the
just gonna make
best
yourself
weapon.
stronger.
I'm
Right.
gonna have like thousands of potions, like, um, and so yeah, I've always kind of been that strategic mind.
Wow.
But
I've been both because like when I was speaking of Kingdom Hearts, because it's funny that he mentioned the boss battle was hard. Because in my head, the first question I thought of was like, but did he fight Demix? That was so effing hard. Like
so true.
I remember I remember like this is a really funny vivid memory of like playing Kingdom Hearts 2 because I remember I Kingdom Hearts 2 I never beat it when I first got it, like when I was in middle school.
Okay.
Like or middle school or like late elementary school and like I never beat it because like first of all, I was like transitioning into the
Right.
age and culture where like video games weren't cool, quote unquote, whatever. And so like I was just like slowly growing in disinterest. And then like there was this battle with Demic where I like remember just sitting here like fighting for hours,
Right.
like hours, like so hard. And then I remember giving up so bad that like I just didn't play like forever and ever and ever. And I remember we were like getting rid of everything like in our house and stuff like that. And my dad was just like, "What do you want to do with this PS2?" And I was just like, "You can like honestly just donate it.
Oh
Like I'm
my
not gonna play it
gosh.
anymore." Because in my heart, I was like,
So
"Oh my gosh,
defeated.
like video games." Yeah, I was just number one defeated, and number two, I was like, "Ugh, video games like just won't be cool in 2 years." And that was like the math I did in my head. Can you believe? So I was just like, "Give it to the poor. I don't care.
Oh
I'd
my
rather just
gosh.
enjoy other things." And so I remember like just I just never beat it. And then I had gotten back surgery like my
Oh,
freshman year of high
right.
school. And so one of my weird feigned and like drugged up questions and requests that I made was like, "Fetch me a PS2." My dad was like, "What?" "Fetch me a PS2." And so he did just that. Like he just went to a GameStop. I think they were like $30 at the time before like the
Right.
revival of like everyone just wanted to play vintage
Yeah.
games. They're like $30, and he like picked one up and he's like, "Here's your PS2." And I remember this was a crazy day too because like the nurse had set it up,
What?
like not my dad or me. Like she had just come and she's like, "Okay, yeah," and she brought a TV
What?
and then she like set it up,
Dude.
and I just sat there and played, and then it was time for me to go home, and I just like cranked it out. I just beat the thing. I remember getting to the Demix battle, and I remember yelling like this was the most uncontrollable. You're like, "Oh!" Like you know, because all you're hitting in Kingdom Hearts is just like
Yep.
A, and then
Yeah.
maybe a
Yeah.
couple blocks, you know. And so I was like, "Oh!" Just like I was just yelling in my house. And then I beat him, and I couldn't do much because I was like recovering from back
Right.
surgery. So I was just like, oh. And then there's a whole other story to Kingdom Hearts that I was really like happy with.
Dude,
So I just,
I
yeah,
love it.
that was just like a crazy, crazy
I love
thing.
it.
Uh,
No, it's a good segue too, because I'm interested. One of my questions for you is I want to know what what kind of gamer do you consider yourself? Like, do you consider yourself a more like an average gamer, casual, hardcore? Like, I have an opinion, I think, on where you stand, but I really want to know from your perspective, like where you hold yourself as a gamer.
is there like a simp category? Like I'm a simp for video games.
That's so
Like I'm
funny. That is the perfect definition.
That's so funny. I can't believe I said that on live
Dude,
television or podcast
dude.
vision.
It's just so perfect. Like for literally for you, it's the perfect. Because I was writing this question out, and I was like, I was thinking of like adjectives. I was like hardcore, average, casual, and I was like, these words aren't like none of these words are David. Like I could not think of a word for
Mm-hmm.
it, and then he said,
Mm-hmm.
"Is the perfect word." Oh, I love it.
Well, it makes the most sense because like I don't. So, like I played all of the seminals, you know, like all the seminal
Right.
features that everyone has played, at least some of
Sure.
them. But like I just like didn't go as hard
Right.
as like everyone else did, you
Yeah.
know? And I still don't. Like I just kind of like F around on the video
Right.
game, you
Right.
know? And so I just like right, so I just am like, "Can I please play Animal Crossing?" And like or like, "Can you join me on my Minecraft server?" You know, like just that kind of thing. But it's never really like that serious for me. Like it's
Right.
always just like, yeah.
Yeah, no, I would
That's
consider
so
you
funny.
like almost like a day trader. Like you're not investing your
Yeah.
life savings here, but you're looking for a little fun like every once in a while. You're trying to get something, you know.
Right. And like joining the fandom for that, like,
Yeah,
you
yeah, yeah,
know,
yeah.
that's also what I do. Just like I like enjoy this thing and I'm like, wait, other people do too. Let me see what's happening in there. And then I go in.
Yeah.
And then they're like saying all these crazy things and doing all these with literally like like a silent colonizer. Like I just come in and
I
I'm like
love it.
observing
I
everybody and
love it.
just like what is happening.
Yeah, one of my friends posted on the first video when I posted it on Facebook, and she was like, "I hope you use words I can understand," because she's not a gamer at all. And I was like, I was like, Christina, I love that you want to support me, but this podcast just might not be for you. Like, you're just not gonna get what's going on here.
She was like, "Can you please just like make the language like very understandable for other people to know?" And you were like, "No, that's not positive. Stop."
I was like, I'm sorry, that's not what's happening here. Oh man. Okay, so a simp gamer, I love it. Let's talk about something more specific. I want to start hitting on music.
Okay.
Being the musician that you are.
Right.
Of all the games you've played, which would you say had the best music?
I think I should start off by saying this. I'll say that music in video games has been like, of course, there's like hits and misses.
Yeah.
You know, like you'll find games that are like, wow, the music is so terrible. But I also often feel like you don't hear a lot about those games with bad music because also like the music in a game kind of reflects the quality of the game within itself. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But it doesn't work like vice versa. Like just because the game is bad doesn't mean that the music isn't good.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? So like so this answer to me matters because like this game isn't really as popular, but it's like very good musically. And it was Zelda and the Minish Cap. Do you remember that game?
Okay.
Yeah. So Zelda and the Minish Cap, I really enjoyed the music in that game because it was like of course, so that one was for the Game Boy, right?
Yeah.
There's a Game Boy one, and then it was just for the Game Boy. There wasn't a DS version for it, right?
I don't think it was DS. I think it was the last Game Boy Advanced game. Everyone that's listening to this right now is gonna be like, "You're an idiot. You don't know anything about games."
Yeah, yeah, the troll. Yeah. Oh, how dare you make a podcast? Jeez, forget you and your First Amendment rights.
You don't know the Minish Cap. Hold on, I'm looking it up, dude. We're right. Game Boy Advanced.
Suck on that,
yeah, trolls. Take that,
Jeez.
Dude. Now who looks dumb?
I'm human. Wow. You do that. Anyways, so the Minish Cap, like this is crazy. Yeah. So video games for me came like at a weird time where like of course my parents were like video games were not so sure with like our faith and stuff like that, and it was hard to kind of like talk to them about those kind of things too because of just like I didn't know how to justify it for myself either. Whatever, I was like so young.
Yeah,
and so like it was not that difficult to come by video games, but it was kind of hard to like come by video games that like your family members didn't like pioneer for you. So like we had a ton of family members play like Final Fantasy and then like the Mario games, and then there was just like all of these other games that we had played. Of course, like my cousin was like pioneering this whole thing for us. So whatever they played, like we would just play because my parents had seen them play it and then they had seen us play it. And so like they didn't have to do the research that most games like take. And so like whenever I wanted to play games that like no one else had played, it was always just really hard to come by those. But this game was crazy because I found this game on the floor of like my Christian private school that I was attending at the time.
No way.
It was crazy. Literally, this was not like the first fun thing I had found on the floor. Like I'm cleaning out my room. I'm in my childhood home. I think as maybe some of you are in. I don't know. Who knows? Yeah. And so like I had to do a lot of cleaning out of my bedroom, and like I found this Power Ranger, this pink Power Ranger, and I was like, how did I come across this really fun toy? And I remember it's because I found it on the floor of this weird private Christian school, like in Puerto Rico, that I had attended at the time. Yeah, and so this is how I found Zelda and the Minish Cap. Was I had found it on the floor, and in my head I was just like, free video game.
Yeah,
I mean, like who wouldn't, you know? So I just find it outside, exposed to the elements.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and every single game that I found on the floor was just had worked. Yeah, it was so weird. I like never know.
Yeah, that's wild.
I just never knew how I came across these things. So I found Zelda, like Legend of Zelda, the Minish Cap on the floor. Crazy. I remember putting it in, and like a bunch of my friends had been getting into the Minish Cap, and that's when like the crazy like Zelda, like I call take this with a grain of salt, everyone who's listening, but like that like Zelda
Mm,
masculinity that had just like kind of like if you played
yeah.
Zelda, like you were the
Right.
guy,
Right.
like you just like, and not just like whatever. It was just like you had like deeper understanding. You had like deeper. You just had like, and so that was just kind of the people group that I put people who like played Zelda instead of like Mario games at first. Like that's
Mm.
just like the group that I put them in, and like. And like when I found the Zelda game, I was like, "Oh, I'm in."
Right.
Like
I'm
now
in.
I have deeper thoughts and
I love
understanding.
it.
Like now I just, and so I remember putting it in, and then like being so shook that it wasn't like a regular Zelda game, but it was a game about Link and his hat,
Right.
and like being very small. And so I was like, what the F? And I remember like I just like threw it away or whatever. I like didn't even think about it. But then I like picked it up again and I like started playing it, and the storyline is just so
Yeah.
interesting because it's like you're trying to save like
Yeah.
Zelda and you're trying to beat, I think, Ganondorf. Maybe, I don't know. It probably isn't even Ganondorf who's the enemy there, but like I remember like the storyline in that game just like had the same format, but it was so interesting because like you would minimize yourself and like you would use that minimization to like interact with like a different
Yeah.
universe that like the Zelda universe wouldn't have encountered if this game didn't exist.
Yeah.
But like this game was fine gameplay wise, but like emotionally, like I just was like I had never been more affected
Mm.
by anything besides this game. And I think the music
Yeah.
played a part in that because like it was like you would, of course there's a Legend of Zelda music. So there's like
Sure.
Hyrulean like castle, and then there's like Hyrule Village, and there's all these like side villages in the Legend of Zelda
Right.
world. But then there's like this like Minish Cap world where you're like super small, and they had their own set of music and their own environment and art, and like
Mm.
I just remember being like, oh my gosh, like I'm just so emotional. Like I just was like, wow, like this just really feels like, I think it just related to me and my story
Yeah.
personally. Like of so I'm for the audience. I'm Puerto Rican, and like I grew up in Puerto Rico for like 9 years, and like 9 or 10 years, whatever. And like I remember moving to the States and then like being, because my skin, I'm white,
Yeah.
right? And so like I like remember blending in, but also like not being recognized for my culture.
Mm.
However, I was being separated by my
Yeah.
culture. And so like the Minish Cap is the same idea of like there's this other world existing in this larger world that like
Mm.
no one has to take time to unless they like shrink themselves down. And so like I just remember being so emotional because I was like in elementary school and I was like processing all of
Yeah.
this. And so I was just like, wow, this is amazing. And the music was just like beautiful because it wasn't like just Super Mario Superstar Saga music where it's just like
Yeah. Yeah.
like all of the
Right.
time. It's just like the Minish Cap music was just like lute, that kind of instrument, and like strings every once in a while. And it was so weird because it was like on a Game Boy,
Yeah.
so it
Right.
wasn't
Right.
really
This
like
little speaker.
the highest of
Yeah.
products. Yeah, it was like a little speaker. And like of course, if you were a real Game Boy player, you would plug some headphones in that John and you
Oh
would
yeah.
escape.
Oh yeah. For sure.
And so I remember that was just like, wow, I'm full immersion in gaming right now. Like I'm just in this world.
This is
And
VR.
so yeah. Like on a 9-hour road trip, I'm like, wow, I'm here in Hyrule.
You have your extra batteries like in your side pocket.
Oh yeah, extra batteries. I think like I used a charger at the
Oh,
time because
okay.
that
So
was when they
so you,
first released
you had
chargers. Yeah,
an
yeah,
SP.
yeah.
You had one of the ones that flipped open. Yeah.
Yes, a Game Boy SP. I had the blue
Okay.
one or the in.
Yeah.
And I remember, yeah, it was a Game Boy Color too because I'm rich as hell, you
Nice.
know.
I love it. I love it. But
And so I remember,
no, I would
yeah,
say you bring up a good point. I like like obviously music has been a part of games for as long as the technology would allow it. Like even in a Game Boy
right,
setting where the technology is limited, and even before that, there's music in original Nintendo games. I wonder, from your perspective,
Mm,
what is the importance of music in games?
great question. I've thought about this. I'm not a scholar, but like
Yeah, but your opinions are
I think
valid.
that like oh wow, appreciate it to be validated on live
Look,
podcast
anytime.
vision. Sweet. But like I think music like mentally prepares you for what's to
Mm,
come. Like or like at least mentally prepares you about like the severity of the situation.
sure.
And I think like this stems beyond like storytelling games. I think this stems like so Bomberman. I don't know if any of y'all
Oh
played
yeah,
of
I'm a
Bomberman
huge fan.
ever. Oh yeah, great game. I never really got invested into the story of it. Just it was just like a weird maze game with
Yeah.
bombs.
Great description.
And so right. And like that music was never not intense. Like you wouldn't just go into a Bomberman arena and it would just be like Spring
Right.
Lilies or like Spring, but you know. And so like you would just walk in and it'd be like, oh my gosh, there are bombs. You need to defuse them. You need to like blow them up. And the music like reflected
Mm,
that severity of the situation. So I think that like it mentally prepares you for like what's happening and like what's about to happen. And it like it tries to relate, I think, and this is more of like a temperament kind of deal, but whatever. Maybe someone will relate to this, but like I think the music that video games try to
mm.
produce try their best to like emulate like this weird kind of soundtrack that everyone kind of has playing about like their lives already.
Ah,
You know what I
interesting.
mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like I think like video games exist in a really interesting arena where like they're providing an environment for like escapism, whether or not you view it that way. Like they're
Yeah,
trying to
sure.
provide that environment, and like the music just kind of reaches to a point where like so you're like so you're like Luigi and you're hanging up your laundry and all of a sudden Toad comes in and he's like Zelda is
Yeah.
missing. But like the music doesn't really like represent what's happening, like the severity of that
Right.
situation. Like life still goes on in that like Shroom Castle community area. And so like the music there is just interesting when you walk into that house and like there's just
Hmm.
like this calm but like steady pacing music that's just like happening and you just know that like you have to grab Mario comes out of the shower. But when you get into battle or you confront an enemy, immediately it just goes into like a different like dun,
Right.
dun, dun, or like you know it just goes straight into this like fast paced, maybe in a minor key, you know, kind of deal where you have to like fight this
Sure.
enemy. So I think that's why it's important is because like it tries to invoke like emotion or like stimulation in your brain to like focus or like engage
Mm.
more.
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever thought about it from that perspective, but I think it's the point. I think the point is that, the music is supposed to hit you almost on a subconscious level. Like, you're
Right.
not supposed to think about, oh, the music just changed, but on an emotional level, because the music just changed, something is going on. You see
Right.
that in horror movies. Like, if the horror movie was silent the whole time, it'd be a different kind of horror. We see that with Quiet Place.
Right. Right. Right.
Um, but most traditional horror movies, the music spikes and there's intense dramatic music before something scary happens, or there's no music at all. And either way, the lack of or the presentation of music emphasizes a certain point that the creator is going for. um,
Right.
so yeah, no, I totally, I'm there, right there with you. Has there ever been a game that you played just for the music?
Well, Minish Cap is one of those games for me, but I want to give you like a different
Mm.
answer just for the music.
So I can, while you're thinking, I
Oh,
can I can tell you one that I played. Um,
yeah, tell me one of
yeah,
yours.
so there's a game called Tower of Heaven, and it's like a really short, like 16-bit web game. Like, I'm not even sure if it's on other platforms. I found it online, and the way I actually found the game was I was listening to a Spotify radio of video game background music, and
Oh,
Tower of Heaven music came on, and its music is fire. Like, it's so good.
oh,
And I was like,
interesting.
what game is this? Like, I've never heard of this game. I've never seen it before. And so I typed it in. I went online, and I did a let's play for the channel because it was super short. I think it's like 12 levels or something like that. And so I like
Okay.
blazed through it in like 30 minutes. But the music is just so good, and I would have never found the game had I not heard the soundtrack.
That is so interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. That really makes you
Yeah.
think. Did the music represent the game? Like, did it do
Yeah,
justice?
I think so. The main premise is that it's like a very challenging platformer. So
Mm-hmm.
there's like a lot of rules, and each time you get to a new level, there's a new rule. So like one of the rules, to give you an example, like you get to a certain point in the game, and the rule is you cannot walk left. And so like if
Oh,
you walk to the right, you can jump and then move left. So there's sometimes you can cheese the system a little bit, but there's lots of times where you
right.
totally forget and you just move left and you die and you start the level over again. Uh,
Oh,
yeah,
whoa, that's
yeah.
crazy.
So it was a very challenging game. Once you figured out the rules and stuff, it wasn't super hard, but the music definitely matched the pace of the game for sure.
Hmm. Wow, that's really interesting. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's nuts, but
That's also really cool how you found that
yeah,
game.
it's. I mean, like I said, it's super wild. Just on my Spotify random radio, and it came up, and I was like, dude, whatever game this is from, it's fire. Um, yeah, has
Wow.
there been a game that you can think of that you played just for the music?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of like whenever I've played a game and I've just like let the game sit near me idle
Mm.
while I just like listen to the music. Because that's what I would do that a lot. I was like an emotional child. I still am. So I would just like, those like, if you're on TikTok, like people being like, I'm the main character,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. Like I've really channeled into that like when I was
I love
younger,
it.
and I would like whenever I get sad, I would just like turn on my video game and then put it near me, and then just like disassociate and just completely escape.
Yeah.
But I think one of the games that I really enjoyed the music of was like Mario Galaxy like 1 and 2.
Wow. Great choice.
Yeah, like kind of a left field, a little bit of answer because like those games are just like semi forgotten for what they
Yeah.
were,
Sure.
but like the music for those games were just like so beautiful. Like I don't even think I like enjoyed the Galaxy games as much.
Mm.
And my brother definitely didn't because he like got a headache because of the gyroscope
Yeah.
aspect
Yeah. It's
of
totally
the
fair.
Galaxy was just like, and like the art was really intense, so it was just like a lot going on, but the music, oh my goodness, like, and just how it interacted with like the
Yeah.
world was just like, it was literally like getting high. Like it was just like this celestial
Yeah.
aspect of like I'm in space, and I like when I jump, the space in between me and like the ground is like the music
Mm.
kind of emulating this experience that like there's like no gravity. And so I remember those games. So I
Yeah.
was just like, wow, those are really, really
Yeah.
good. I think I'd play that again, just listen to music,
Dude,
honestly.
I'm in the same boat with you there. I know exactly what you're talking about. The first game, they give you Rosalina's backstory, and to this
Oh
day,
yeah,
her backstory is one of the best Mario backstories I've ever seen.
right. I agree too. She's not really like given the justice that she deserves as a
Yeah,
character, but her backstory is really, really
yeah,
good.
yeah. But yes, you're right. The music in that is amazing. That's a great choice. Um,
Hmm.
Opposite question now. Has there ever been a game
Okay.
that you had to put down because the music was so bad?
Hmm. Very good question. I like to think I have good taste. It was such a terrible way to start that question.
No, I
I'm
think I
such
think I
a,
get what you
I'm
mean.
such a
No,
douche.
no, no, because you're if you've been listening up to this point, you have a comprehension of David as a gamer, and you're for the most part getting your games from people who have played them before, or getting the idea to play that game from somebody else. So like, few people are gonna be like, "Hey, play this terrible game," you know. Um, so
Right,
the chances of you finding a game that has terrible music is rare. I was just wondering if there was one that
right.
you had happened to play, and you're just like, nope, this is not happening.
I think Okay, I'll start with this, and maybe this answer's kind of off.
I'm here for it.
So, this was my first exposure to video games.
Okay.
Okay, actually, I wouldn't say it's my first. This was my first exposure to a bad video game,
Okay.
and it was a video game from the Star Fox
Oh,
series.
only one of those games is good, so.
Uh-huh. Okay, glad to know because the GameCube game, is that one of the good ones?
No.
Okay, good, 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 good. Because that game was
Yeah, it's
awful.
so
And
bad.
this is when I think like the world was at like at peak its best because like you could go to
Mm.
Blockbuster and rent a video game. That's also I think how I was framed as like a simp video gamer is that like I
Mm.
could try out video games and like if I didn't like them, I just gave it back to Blockbuster, you know?
Blockbuster pimped out
'Cause it
games to
was
you.
yes, literally. Because you could like, I remember this clear as day. We would go to Blockbuster on a Friday night to pick out a movie, and we would have like pizza with it. And then at those times, like I would pick out a video game because they had a video game section at Blockbuster, and so I'd pick out a video game. And whenever I feel confident, it would be like a hit or a miss. And like I feel like this week, this was one of the months where I was like hitting constantly. There was not even one miss. And then I picked out one video game, and we brought it back and it was a Star Fox
Mm.
game. And I remember like starting the game and being so stressed out. Like I started crying and I
Dang.
was like freaking out and I was like I hate this game. It's so scary. There are these monsters in it. This
Dang.
fox comes in like 20 minutes later into the introduction. We're in space. Everybody's shooting each other. And I didn't come to these thoughts if it was just like the visuals
Right.
alone. The music was like, like it was just like going off. Like it was insane. And I remember like just innately my body was like, shut
Right.
down, you can't play
Right.
this. I just like started freaking out
Right.
and crying. And I remember like I didn't even play the game. Like I didn't even give the
That's
game like
crazy.
5 minutes of
Right.
playtime. I just was like, I can't play this. We're giving it back to Blockbuster in the morning. Like I can't even have this in the house. Like it's so scary and so stressful.
I love it. That's so funny. Yeah, that is by
So I play those
far
games.
one of the lower end Star Fox games, and that's pretty universally
Good.
held opinion. But to
Okay.
hear,
Unless you're like some weird Star Fox
yeah,
guy, like
well, even
we see you, I
yeah, yeah,
suppose.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's true, true, true. I can't out all of the potential fans like that.
Right.
But no, I like it's funny because I also played that game for only 5 minutes, but just because from like the thing that pulls me into games is the story, and so I'm very
Right.
narratively compelled, and that game, I just the whole thing felt chaotic. Like I didn't know why
Yeah.
anyone was doing anything in the whole first
Right.
3 levels of the game that I played, and I was just like, okay, I'm never playing this game again.
Right. It's just so confusing and so
Yep.
chaotic. And I think it had like a weird Donkey Kong format to it too.
Yeah.
So it was just
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
what? Like, is this an RPG?
Yeah. They
Yeah.
didn't know what
Chaos.
they were doing
Absolute
for sure.
chaos.
Um,
Right.
all right. So this question I'm very interested in your opinion on. So I don't
Okay.
know how much music composition you have done. Um, I'm
Okay.
sure to some extent you have composed something, whether it's been released to the public or it's sitting in a shelf on your room or crumpled up in a trash can in your room. But
Right.
my
Hmm.
question is, I know there's a lot that goes into crafting music emotionally. Um,
Hmm.
do you think that it's harder to craft a song for a game since in theory, you're not the person who, came up with a game idea, who came up with the art for the game, who came up with the story. You're a person hired to compose for someone else's vision. Do you think it's harder to do
Right.
that, or is it harder to be true with your emotions in music that you produce for yourself?
That's a good question. some I guess I should give everyone a little
Yeah.
background. Like I have been writing more music in these days. I'm in a
Okay.
band. I'm gonna do a soft plug
Do it,
since this is
dude.
a
Dude.
platform, if that's okay
Yes, this is
with
what it's
you.
all about. Plug away.
Okay, good. I'm in a band, Ditch Lily Music. You can look us up on Instagram. Unfortunately, our music isn't out, but we hope to release some very, very soon. We have our full length album is
I
almost
love
done,
it.
like written wise. We've just been writing like
Dude, I
crazy.
love it.
And so um yeah, it's been really, really fun. Anna Gonzalez, you know Anna
Yeah.
Gonzalez, she's in the band. And so um we've been writing together on most of the
Okay.
songs. There's a couple songs where we just like wrote and they ended up just being what they were and like we just didn't do much about
Sure.
them, but like most of the songs on the album are co-written. And like so now my perspective of like songwriting is way different than it was before. I think before I would have been like, yeah, like what I think I would have just given you a black or white
Mm.
answer, but now I'm giving you like this is there's that tense in
Yeah.
between where like you want to like write and create like solely based on what your heart wants to convey,
Mm.
right? Like there's always that tension as an artist of like I want to make something where I can like look at it and say that that's
Mm.
mine, but you also want like other people to consume it,
Yeah.
right? And so all of a sudden you can't put in, well, you can. I mean, art is so subjective, whatever.
Sure.
Like you can do whatever you want with something and someone will like
Sure.
it somewhere in the world. But like if you want to release something that's like that can like relate with someone so intensely, like you have to either really dramatize the effect or you have to like extremely simplify the effect of like that song
Mm.
or music or lyric that you're doing because like you have to like compact it in this one package where like it can be conveyed to someone so easily. So with video game
Yeah.
music, I think that I'm sure that like no composer has ever like written something and been like, ah, yes, it is finished. Like
Sure.
no, like absolutely no edits.
Right.
Like this is just what the video game conveys. Because I think like while there is like a formula, I'm sure that like video game developers are like, this is kind of like a steady pace, kind of
Mm.
thing, whatever. But I think that there's always like a miscommunique between like the developer and the
Sure.
musician that's just like maybe you didn't get maybe you didn't see where I was getting at
Right.
here. And so there's probably like millions of edits and turnover. So I think it's probably like really difficult to write based on. So I think about Animal
Yeah.
Crossing,
Yeah.
right? This is the game platform that we're on
Yeah.
right now. The music in this game is like absolutely one of the best seminal productions of
Mm.
like the
Mm-hmm.
century.
Yep.
Like in my opinion, like the music that's come out of it is just like, wow, chef's
Yes.
kiss, great,
Yeah.
right? And so like there's like the composer who writes this music, right?
Mm.
And I would just be really curious to see like where he first started with and like what
Mm.
he first sent over to the
Interesting.
composer, to the developers. Because like I'm wondering like if my question would just be like, what was the vision? Like
Yeah.
what led you to this decision and like what led you to this? Because it conveyed so well, like
Right.
just
Right.
universally. And so like it wasn't, and I'm sure it wasn't a matter of like whoever composed the music for Animal Crossing to be like, ah, yes, of course, and first try just release something. I'm sure that there was just like
Right.
some weird, I like to think 2 p.m. Animal Crossing is like an unedited, like
Yeah.
just I'm just gonna shoot this over, I don't even care because it's so bad and like conveyed so terrible. Have you listened to
I
2
have.
p.m. on New
I have.
Horizons? uh who came up with that? Like what was there has to be like a board meeting,
Right.
where everyone was listening to the
Right.
music and they like surely not everyone in Nintendo was like, I think this is a vibe, know?
Well, it's so funny because one of my favorite tracks on the game is 2 a.m. And so
Yeah.
it's so funny because what board meeting where they're like 2 p.m. the time that like probably most people like, well, I guess they wouldn't have predicted the quarantine, so maybe it wouldn't have been the case, Maybe they were expecting people to play
Right.
at 2 a.m. in the morning. But yeah, it's just funny because, like, to my mind, in the current world we're living in, 2 p.m. is when people are playing Animal Crossing. But the best track
Yeah.
is at 2 a.m. when, like, no one's playing the game. It's like,
Right. Because everyone's in
yeah, right,
bed.
right.
Right. Tired from playing Animal Crossing the
Yeah.
whole day, you know?
They can't bear to listen to
It's
any
like
more
woke up.
tracks.
Literally, literally, like they just, if I listen to one more, like just sweet bass line or piano, I'll off myself. You know, like there's absolutely no way I can handle this. So yeah, I mean, I wonder. I would probably like say that it's probably wicked
Mm,
hard to write something that could be universally like it's probably, I think there's a gauge. It's probably wicked hard to write something as good as Animal Crossing soundtrack
sure.
music because of the audience that you're
Yeah.
reaching to, you know, and the expectation that they like hold against
Yeah.
you, you
Yeah.
know, of like we expect you to literally lull us to sleep.
Right. Right.
Versus there's like Kingdom Hearts, you know, like there's an expectation, of course, but of course they're just going to do whatever they want to do,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
like
No, and I even
the music changes between number two, Kingdom Hearts 2 and Kingdom
right.
Hearts 3 is like dramatically
Yeah.
different.
I even think too the gameplay is important when you're composing the music because Animal Crossing, so much of what you're doing is mindless, and so the music hits
Mm.
you, I think, harder because you're
Right.
hearing it consistently. Whereas, you know, in some of the battles in Kingdom Hearts, like you're so visually attacked that like your
Mm-hmm.
other senses almost don't even pick up what's happening. There's been times where like I've been in a
Right.
battle and I'm like I don't even hear the music. But Animal Crossing I hear it so much because the rest of what I'm doing is, you know, not grabbing me as hard. So
Right.
I you know, I think in that perspective too, it makes composition harder because your audience is definitely listening consistently to your music.
Right. You mean to tell me that you've never like had an epiphany to the same droning music for an hour like I have in the past?
Well, it's so funny because like, to be honest, David, like Oblivion or Skyrim, those two games, I've listened
Okay.
to that
Uh-huh.
those games background music constantly because I do have epiphanies to those
Mm.
games music. I don't know about
Oh,
Animal Crossing so much. I think, I mean, I love the music and it's amazing. I don't know about epiphanies,
right.
but like when I was
Right.
doing homework at college, I would be listening to Oblivion background music because it's just so like the music in my mind is composed in a way that makes you want to achieve goals. Like
Mm.
the whole point of the game is to get a quest and accomplish the goal or objective of that quest. So they composed
Right.
music that would encourage you to continue on your way and continue playing. And I
That's so
yeah, I get that
interesting.
same motivation in real life when I listen to that music. So, yeah.
Wow. That's so interesting that you say that because like it's funny now the way that I'm realizing how like music affects the developing motor
Mm,
skills. Maybe developing motor skills is not the right language, but like the development of like your your tasking
yeah.
abilities. Like I think because of the mindless activity that I do on Animal Crossing, it like gives me the tolerance to
Mm,
do mindless activities like
yeah.
in everyday life.
Yeah.
Like I'm so I was a barista previously. Like I'm not working right now,
Sure.
and like that job is like perfect for me because it's all
Yeah.
mindless ability of just like muscle memory. I know what I'm doing right now, and I know what's happening, and it's just like I can do that because of the versus Skyrim. So I just started getting into Skyrim like so
Mm,
recently, like last fall. I got Skyrim because it's. I mean, you can only
right.
imagine me like playing Skyrim, you
Right.
know. And so it's an event, and so like we like would get together playing, and I was just like, I remember like getting constantly stressed out like by the music,
Mm,
And like, but you're right, like it does have that like sense of like, this music is just pursuing me to like get out of this
Right.
cave that I'm in
Right.
right now, because that's what I want, because I don't want to be in this cave any
Right.
longer fighting these like banditos, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So that's so
Yeah.
interesting.
Well, hey, I have one last question for you because surprisingly, it's already been an hour, which is nuts. Um,
Yeah, so nuts. I really do like to talk. You have no
Dude,
clue.
no, I love it. I love it. I was telling Rachel in the last episode, I plan to do round twos because I want, like
Oh,
the point here for me.
where are they
Yeah,
now?
yeah, yeah, sure. But like games will always change. There will always be new games coming out. There will always be more to talk about, and you
Hmm.
can, like I want to have hour-long episodes, but I also want to really dive into, what makes each person that I know a gamer and why they care. So to round
Right.
it out, you kind of, I think, already answered this question, but I want to give you just a little time to talk about it more if you feel so inclined. Which game
Okay.
would you say has affected you the most in your real life?
Oh, great question. So I did mention that Minish Cap
Yeah,
answer because that was like important to me. I think situationally at the time though, because I was like foreign in like a
sure.
common
Yeah,
land. And so that's like the basis of that game is like foreigners in common
yeah.
land. Um, but right now, honestly, and like this is, I don't know what Rachel had said. I didn't get that far into the podcast. I would say in my real life, the game that's like affecting me the most, I think is probably Animal
Okay,
Crossing, like hands down. Only because like there's I'm gonna describe to you an
okay,
experience I had recently, like when I was playing Animal Crossing. I think it was like it was my birthday, and my birthday is it was in March
okay.
31st, so it was like in the
Yeah,
heat of
yeah.
quarantine. Everyone was just like finally figuring out that, oh, I really do have to stay home. People are like
Right,
dying,
right.
and so I was really bummed because like I was like, I'm spending my 22nd birthday like
Mm,
alone in a base. I was living in a basement at the
right,
time, like rent free. It was a great
right. But
situation.
still, not where you want to
However, not
be.
like right, exactly, like in a
Yeah.
quarantine, like where I have to stay home all the time, which would be in the basement all the time. So I was like, wow, like I really like am just gonna like veg out and be so depressed.
Mm,
But like Animal Crossing, when's your birthday,
uh,
Dan? Should I not share that
I'll
online?
say it was
I don't
it
know.
was in April. It was in April. So I'm with you in the
Okay, okay,
quarantine
okay, okay.
birthdays.
Okay, cool, 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 cool. Tight. So you
Mm-hmm.
know that Animal Crossing came
Yeah,
through like with the birthday
yeah. I had my
celebration.
party in
Like
Animal Crossing.
so fun. And like cuz even then, oh man, that was such a great day for me cuz I was like, I can't believe this is happening. Like I woke up and I like turned on the game and immediately like I was like kidnapped into Pashmina's house. That's the house.
I
And like she threw me like such a dope
love
party,
it.
and like I was just like I remember crying because I was like I can't believe this, I'm having such a good time. And then like I remember like the game loading up and like you like make it to the front door of your house or
Mm,
whatever, and you look in the mail and you look at like a letter from your
yeah,
mom, like your internet, like your video game
yeah.
mom. And it was so sweet. Like I remember, I still have it favorited. I remember reading it, and I was just like absolutely demolished, and
Dude, I
absolutely
love it.
like I was just crying so much. I'm such an emotional person to your audience if they don't know. And so like I was just absolutely like destroyed, and like the music in the background just like really kind of captured that moment
Mm,
for me because it was I think it was like 12 or something where it was just like very steady, like just really taught me that like such beautiful things that we can experience like in such ordinary time,
yeah.
like in the midst of just like I'm opening up my mail and I'm like reading a letter from my mom, I'm like, oh my god. And then like life moves on, but I got to experience like care and love and
Mm,
affection like through such a weird medium,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And so I remember just being like, oh, I'm ruined. And then like I got so nostalgic after that about like every single Animal Crossing game that I've ever played, which is like from the GameCube version all the way to the Switch
I love it.
version. Like I remember just being like taken away with like the magic of like, wow, this is what like it's all
Yeah.
about, you know, I guess. I don't
Yeah.
know. Just a good like reminder of hope in like the stressful
Yeah.
times, if you
Yeah.
will.
No, I totally agree. I think it's a great place to wrap it up and end it on. Like the quarantine has given me a chance to play games I've had for a long time, but also
Hmm.
new games are continuing to come out, which I think is huge. And Animal Crossing coming out when it
Yeah.
did, I think not only did it I think make new gamers. I think there's a handful of people that would have never played a game but play Animal Crossing because
Mm,
of the situation that we're all in right now. But
right.
I also think I would go as far as to say is it helped a handful of people really, I think, work through and around what could have been a really depressing time in their life. Um,
Right. Oh yeah, for
because
sure.
it's something being stuck alone in your house can really be something that you somewhere you do not want to be, and um, the chance, even like for me, to have friends come over to my island and just hang out in Discord, like I love that. So yeah,
Hmm.
I can relate to that for sure, and I think the listeners can as well. David, thank you so much for hanging out and chatting about games and
Yeah.
music. I loved it.
Anytime. I love it. It's such a good time. Thank you for deeming me
Dude,
worthy
of course,
to
of
your
course,
video gaming
dude.
community.
No, I knew if there's one thing I know about you, David, I know it's that you have well articulated opinions, and so I was interested in receiving those
Ah,
on the podcast.
yeah, anytime,
Dude,
anytime.
I love it. Thank you so much for watching this episode 4 with David. It was such a blast to talk to him about music and how it affects us subconsciously while gaming. And sometimes we don't even really notice the music, but it still kind of gives us an emotional response that is such a essential part to gaming. I'm sure you can tell that we were both laughing up a storm and just having a good old time. So watch all the way through and feel free to leave a comment. If you want a specific question to be asked, feel free to leave that too, and we can fit that in for following guests. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.